Welcome to Smart Architectural Programming. Troubleshooting fatal errors in Python.
And this should more than likely resolve this error within your coding environment. Uh, if you're using Red Hat or Fedora and you're having this fatal error. Just to give you an understanding, sudo is again the same command word as Linux for the operating system. Yum is the package manager. This is another difference here. Instead of using apt-get as a package manager that we use in Debian, Ubuntu, or Linux systems, we use Yum as the package manager within Red Hat or Fedora systems. So install, I think you understand the gist of it. So you basically, I'm trying to break down these commands so you understand them intuitively, and you don't need to look them up to run these commands. And you can use these commands to do a lot of things within the operating systems to set up your environmental, your environmental conditions for where you're coding in, basically. So the next, I think, platform that I'll go over is Mac OS operating system. So in Mac OS, we use the Homebrew package manager we use Homebrew as a common package manager within the Mac operating system. And you'll notice we're using the word brew because brew is the code word that refers to within the Mac console as towards our package manager. And again, we use install, and then we install Python 3, which install all the Python 3 related libraries and modules within our coding environment, and that should hopefully resolve the problem of this fatal error that you're facing, because it installs everything, including those header files that we're talking about. Then we move to Windows as another operating system. So on Windows, if we basically try to, get an understanding of what happens in Windows, is that Windows is slightly different because for Windows, Visual Studio Code with C++ workload is necessary to resolve this error. Uh, so the desktop development with C++ workload includes the required tools for compiling Python extension modules. So again, Windows is quite different to what other three situations look like. So in this case, let me actually minimize the font size here, so you can see the font for Windows in its entirety instead of looking instead of me moving around. Let me reduce it a little more so you can see it on the screen, and we should be able to let me reduce it a little more as well. So with Windows, there are two steps that you need to work with, right? You need to install Visual Studio Codes with desktop development with C++ workload. And during that installation, this is the keyword. You need to make sure that you select desktop development with C++ workload, right? As you're installing Visual Studio Code to make sure that this error does not repeat again. So with Windows, you can repeat this video again. There's a very crucial difference between Windows and the rest of the different operating systems that we went over on how you can potentially resolve this error. Now, as I mentioned earlier, if you remember, one of the second principles was the third principle for resolving these issues has always been virtual environments, and this is probably the most common reason that these errors appear in most people's, work environments, is that most people in professional circumstances create virtual environments on which they code individual projects, right? But what we assume automatically is that virtual environments have all those, uh, you know, uh, uh, packages that we installed on our general environment, and that is mostly not the case. And in that case, people forget to install Python, right? And then they face these errors. So you need to, when you're working with virtual environments, you need to make sure you open your virtual environments. And to open virtual environments, I have placed uh, both of our methods to do that. On the command line, on the line one, you can use the source when we bin activate for Linux or Mac OS systems to open your virtual environment. And in Windows, you use when we scripts / activate to open your virtual environment. That's on line two. Once you have the virtual environment open using the commands that are on our screen right now, then you install the relevant packages using, you can look the installation guide quickly on the internet, or you can use the command words that I went over earlier for these individual environments to install that within your coding environment. The last thing that we'll go over is basically specifying Python version. Now, this is another common issue that we face with this, is that most people forget that you need to, sometimes you might have multiple Python versions installed in your computer, right? You might have Python 2, 3, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, any different amounts on your computer, right? And this is particularly true for new programmers who install, while during installation, they might install multiple versions because they're inexperienced in setting up their coding environments. And in those cases, yeah, as you might have noticed with computer science, it's a very, very exact science. The computer needs to know exactly what you want it to do, right? And if you're unable to point it exactly that go there, do this, right? It might not be able to. It might not be able to compile successfully. So, in some cases, this error pops up because there are multiple Python versions there, and the compiler doesn't know which ones header files to use to compile this software. So use the code that you're seeing on my screen right now to immediately specify to Python to the computer which Python version you want it to use to when compiling a certain Python file, right? In this case, I've written Python 3.8, but you could change this word to any version of Python you want to use specifically to compile a certain file. Or sometimes new versions have certain things or quirks that might not be present in the previous version, and that might create issues for your compilation of your older project. So you might need to specify an older version of Python to compile that successfully. So I think with that, we're going to wrap up our video. Uh, uh, before we close out our video, George, do you have anything to add at the end?
No, just comment in the comment section if you guys have questions, and thanks for joining.